Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book from Edward Elgar Publishing Limited, that's an independent family publishers. They produce a whole series of research handbooks in various areas of law. The one that I'm looking at this morning has got the title Research Handbook on Directors' Duties, so it's looking at corporate law, company law, whatever you want to call the term. In other words, it's the role of what directors do. Now, the book's been written by and edited by Adolfo Palolini. Now, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And it's an excellent book. And we've given it a title, Thorough Research on the Role and Conduct of Company Directors. Elizabeth and I looked at the book and we were very impressed with it. So we thought we'd have a discussion and we came up with that title. There is the front of the book. There's the spine and then there's the back. This is one of the research handbooks in corporate law and governance. Company law is now known as corporate law or corporate governance or whatever you want to call it, but it's still company law effectively. And what we're looking at here is the role of the director. Now, it's not a big book, but it's a hardback, 350 odd pages. There's the index at the back. You've got quite a lot of footnoting at the bottom, and you've got some paragraph numbering and subheads, which are quite helpful. But it's mainly body copy, if you like, so it's pretty easy to read through. But it's very much a high-level publication, which we would expect from Elgar, who always come up trumps with all of these books. That's the front page. There's the contents section. You see 3 parts mentioned there. And then there's part 4 there. And then you've got the contributors, of which there are a number. I'm going to just run through because these are all the people who put the work in. I can't mention them all by name without it taking up a huge amount of time. But you can see the names of the people just by showing you. There we are there. Now, you've then got an introduction by Adolfo Palolini, which is well worth reading. The introductions are always worth reading. It's not very long, but it actually sets out what he's intending to do and how the book is structured in the 4 parts. There's part 1, and then we go straight in. You see that you've got the title, the name of the writer, the contributor, then you've got paragraph numbering, and you've got footnotes at the bottom. And then we go on from there. And it looks at a whole range of directors' duties. Now, very much more on a, really more of a, an international scale. This one deals with an Australian case, for instance. So, bearing in mind we are in a global community, it's well worth knowing that in this day and age we have to see how people do things in other jurisdictions. Mainly because even with business, an awful lot of business now is conducted internationally. It's no longer just a matter of having local businesses. An awful lot of it is conducted globally. This is what we say about the book. It was Edward Elgar Publishing that originally contacted Adolfo Palolini to produce and edit this book. As one of the latest titles in Elgar's Research Handbooks in Corporate Law and Governance series, it makes any number of statements, erudite and bold, in more or less equal measure, about the role and conduct of company directors and to whom they are actually accountable and why not. The topic is examined from a number of viewpoints and should be of direct interest not just to lawyers but to the public at large, bemused, for example, by the corporate antics of banks and other corporate entities which in recent years have been featured in the media for a number of reasons, good and bad. And I'm recording this in March 2015, so we've been through quite a lot with a number of leading banks to date. A senior lecturer in commercial law at the University of Buckingham and a consultant to a top city law firm, Dr. Palolini leads a team of leading academics, mainly from the leading university law schools around the world. As I've indicated, there are a large number of them because we're looking at a global concept here. Demonstrating high standards of scholarship and trenchant comment, most of these folk are certainly not bashful about expressing their views or substantiating them. In his rather hard-hitting introduction, Palolini expresses the view that company directors owe what might be called a duty of care, not just to shareholders, the traditional view, but to society as a whole, referring, we believe, to the Northern Rock scandal of a few years back and the queues of the bank's customers waiting to recover the fruit of their labour, their life savings, their pensions and the like. Palolini argues that those who suffered the effects of the company's financial distress were not only shareholders but society at large. And of course there is a political dimension on that, because Northern Rock was by far and away the largest lender in the north of England, and that could have had a massive political effect had the company gone down. So you can see that there is a societal impact there, very much so, and I'm glad it was pointed out, because that has a very great impact in the way in which directors behave, or in fact misbehave. Another contributor, Jeff McIntosh, who's a professor of law at the University of Toronto, plus the holder of an astounding array of high-powered qualifications in academia and finance, is of the opinion that the issues of to whom directors' duties are owed is the most important issue in corporate law. It defines the end or purpose of corporate existence, he adds, and thus delineates the function that we wish corporations to play in our lives. Again, an important point, I believe, to be made there. Lawyer, academic or not, you may well be concerned and possibly affected by many of the issues of corporate governance discussed in this book, which is divided, as I've indicated, into 4 parts. Parts 1 and 2 discuss approaches to directorship, respectively, under the common law and under civil law. The general drift of the argument is that human rights and consumer rights have to be protected and, most importantly, respected as part of the duty of directors. Moving on then to part 4, that discusses the liabilities and consequences that may arise in the face of company insolvency. The title of contributor Michelle M. Harmer's article, quote, "Navigating Financial Turbulence, Directors' Duties in the Face of Insolvency," just about says it all, we think. It's well worth reading. Let me conclude by saying, if you're professionally involved or merely interested in the financial services industry and its collective ethical stance, or lack of it, on such issues as social responsibility as well as profit, you should be really interested in acquiring this absorbing, carefully researched and very timely book. And the publication date is cited at 2014. I think the blend between the law, the duties and the social responsibility is going to probably become more important as the century develops, because people are much more aware than they were of some of the shenanigans that have been going on within the financial markets and the financial industry as a whole. And they've woken up to the fact that some of these characters are actually criminals. So let's look at the future and see where we go, because I think books of this nature will help us as investors, as people who expect more from the people running these organisations, that we must get a fair deal at the end of the day. So thank you to all the contributors and to Edward Elgar for a first-class publication. Bye-bye.